At my sister's engagement dinner, my mother raised her glass beneath the chandelier and smiled. A toast to the daughter who actually made something of her life. The guests clapped. My sister laughed. Then my mother turned to me, to the one who didn't. "You're a failure, Mila. Get out." The room went silent. Forks froze midair. I walked away as she handed my sister the house keys, worth $500,000. That night, I lost my home and my family. But 3 years later, they drove past my new gate and realized whose house it really was. Growing up in Greenwich, our family looked perfect from the outside. White fences, charity dinners, and a manicured lawn that my mother, Leslie, called our reputation. Inside, everything revolved around appearances. My mother was the kind of woman who cared more about the country club gossip than her own daughter's tears. My sister, Lisa, 3 years older and always polished, was her masterpiece. "Lisa will run the world someday," Mom used to say, loud enough for me to hear. My father, Zachary, was different. He was quiet, patient, a software engineer who traded his own passion for technology to make my mother happy in finance. He was the one who taught me to code, sitting with me late at night in his cluttered home office. "Build something real," he'd say, adjusting his glasses while I typed. Those words stuck with me long after he was gone. When he died in a car accident my senior year of high school, the house went cold. Mom's obsession with image grew even sharper. Like she had to prove to the world that losing her husband hadn't shaken her control. She found it easier to love Lisa, the reflection of herself, while I became the reminder of what she couldn't manage. My achievements in renewable energy and software barely earned a nod. "Cute hobby," she'd mutter, while Lisa got framed awards for business essays that Dad once helped her write. Aunt Lori, Mom's older sister, lived one town over and was no better. She had married into money, and every time she visited, she found a new way to remind me of my place. "Still playing with gadgets, Mila?" She'd smirk, sipping her expensive wine. "Maybe one day you'll grow out of it." I learned to smile, to stay quiet, to disappear before their laughter hit too hard. For years, I believed silence kept the peace. But that night, Lisa's engagement dinner proved silence only protects the wrong people. I stood beside the table holding my glass while the chandelier above us flickered against the gold wallpaper. Mom lifted her glass and toasted Lisa as if she'd just crowned a queen. Then she turned to me and ended the sentence that would change everything. "To the one who didn't." When the laughter died, I walked out without a word. My mother handed Lisa the keys to the family home, the same place where Dad once showed me how to build my first solar tracking app. Watching her slip those keys into her purse was like watching them bury my father's belief in me all over again. That was the night I stopped being their quiet disappointment. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew it had to be somewhere far from them and far from the person they thought I was. The first night after that dinner, I slept in my car. The rain hit the windshield so hard it blurred the streetlights into white streaks. I remember gripping the steering wheel and whispering, "Don't cry." Crying felt like something my mother would expect. By morning, I drove to Brooklyn and signed a lease for the cheapest studio I could find. One room, one window, one radiator that hissed like it was alive. I unpacked everything I owned. A duffel bag of clothes, a cracked laptop, and a folder with my old coding projects. That was it. No family photos, no furniture, no trace of the life I'd just been cut from. For weeks, I lived on instant noodles and freelance work, small website gigs that barely covered my bills. Every night, I'd scroll through photos of Lisa's engagement party splashed across social media. She looked radiant. My mother stood beside her, champagne in hand, the caption reading, "Proud Mom Moment." I didn't comment. I didn't post. I just worked. One afternoon, while writing code in a crowded coffee shop, I overheard two investors talking about a city grant for sustainable tech startups. Something clicked. I opened my laptop and began sketching the idea that had lived in my head since Dad's lessons years ago, a program that could reduce urban energy waste through adaptive solar systems. That's when Professor Melinda Jenkins, my old university mentor, reappeared in my life. She'd always believed in me back in college when no one else cared about renewable tech. I emailed her the prototype, half expecting silence. Instead, she replied within hours. "Come see me. This is promising." Her small lab at NYU became my second home. She introduced me to Misty Ramirez, a sharp engineer with quick hands and quicker ideas. Misty understood me in a way few people ever did. Driven, stubborn, quietly angry at being underestimated. We spent nights debugging, running simulations, sleeping under our desks between tests. "You know," Misty said once, "you code like you're fighting someone." Maybe I am. I told her. The program, Green Tech Solutions, began to take shape. We built models that tracked sunlight angles across city grids and adjusted energy flow automatically. When the first version worked, we screamed so loud security came up to check. Still, survival was a daily battle. The rent notice slid under my door one morning with red letters that made my stomach twist. I remember calling Misty and laughing through my panic. I just need one investor before the landlord changes the locks. That investor turned out to be Justin Patel, a venture capitalist Melinda introduced us to. He wore sneakers with his suit and spoke fast, like his mind was 2 steps ahead of his words. After seeing our demo, he said, "You're solving something that actually matters. Let's make it real." His fund gave us $75,000. Barely enough to breathe, but enough to start. Misty and I moved into a small co-working space that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. We worked 18-hour days. Sometimes I'd glance at the reflection in the office window, my tired face, hollow eyes, hair tied back, and whisper, "Not a failure." Slowly, things shifted. A local grocery chain agreed to test our software across 10 stores. The results were better than we'd promised. Energy bills down 30%. The day they signed the contract, I went home, sat on my apartment floor, and let the tears fall. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time I had proof. I didn't call my mother. I didn't need her to know. Not yet. But deep down, a small voice whispered that she would find out eventually. And when she did, I wanted her to see it not in headlines, not in gossip, but with her own eyes. The months that followed were a blur of code, contracts, and caffeine. Misty and I worked until dawn most nights, half living on takeout and stubbornness. Green Tech Solutions was still small, just 2 women in a room full of tangled wires. But it was alive. Every client review, every new email inquiry felt like oxygen. Still, the old voices in my head followed me everywhere. My mother's, "Cute hobby, Mila." My aunt's, "You'll grow out of it." And Lisa's, the one that hurt most, "You're just jealous." Those echoes became my fuel. Every time exhaustion threatened to crush me, I'd hear them again and keep typing. We hit roadblocks, of course. Our first big contract almost collapsed when a major retailer delayed payments, and the rent on our co-working space nearly doubled overnight. Misty panicked. I didn't. I'd already lost everything once. Money didn't scare me anymore. What scared me was going back to who I was before, silent, apologetic, invisible. One night, I stayed late alone, finishing code updates for a system audit. Outside, the city hummed, the low buzz of traffic, the rhythm of a world that didn't care whether I made it or not. I remember looking at the screen's reflection in the window and whispering, "Dad, I'm still building something real." That week, we landed a feature in a sustainability blog. It wasn't huge, but it caught the attention of a local tech reporter who wanted to visit our setup. When the article came out, it opened doors. Small businesses started calling. I hired 2 interns. We moved into a modest office with sunlight and a decent coffee machine. The milestones came faster after that. Partnerships, grants, new cities testing our product. Our name started appearing in newsletters that once ignored me. And yet, I kept quiet. I didn't update family. I didn't post online. Success felt sacred, fragile, like a flame that would vanish if I bragged. Misty kept teasing me. "You know, your mom's probably pretending she discovered you." I'd smile. "Let her. I don't need her story anymore." Then came the moment everything shifted. The grocery chain's national board invited us to present green tech at their headquarters. The room was full of executives in suits, each holding tablets with our data displayed. I walked in wearing the same minimalist white blouse I'd worn to Lisa's engagement dinner. It felt symbolic, like rewriting that night on my own terms. When I finished the presentation, the room erupted in applause. The contract we signed that day meant full financial independence. No more rent panic. No more skipping meals. That evening, I bought a small, modern house in Greenwich. A quiet cul-de-sac, glass walls, solar panels running entirely on my software. My name was the only one on the deed. As I stood in the empty living room, sunlight pouring through the glass, I thought of that night 3 years ago. My mother's voice, Lisa's laughter, the keys glinting in my sister's hand. I had no plans to return the favor. My silence would do it for me. 3 years later, success didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like quiet mornings. I'd wake before sunrise, brew coffee in my spotless kitchen, and watched the light crawl across the solar panels on my roof. The house, Cherm's top house, hummed with the low, steady rhythm of my own software, optimizing every watt. It wasn't just shelter, it was proof. Green Tech Solutions had grown beyond anything I imagined. We'd secured major contracts across New York and New Jersey, expanded our team to 20 engineers, and were negotiating with city officials for large-scale implementation. Our clients saved millions. My face appeared in a few interviews, but I still kept my voice measured, calm. People called me a visionary. I called it survival. That October morning started like any other. The air was crisp, sunlight cutting through red and gold leaves. I was on a call with Misty about a new energy audit when my phone buzzed again and again. Unknown number. Same area code as my mother's. I ignored it. When it rang a fourth time, I sighed and stepped outside. Through the glass gate, a black SUV slowed on the street, engine purring. It wasn't until the window rolled down that I saw her. Lisa! Perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect panic. Her eyes darted between me and the house like she couldn't make sense of it. I didn't move. She froze, staring at the discreet Green Tech Solutions plaque beside the driveway, the one with my name under it. Her hand shot to her phone. I could read her lips before I heard her voice. Mom, this house is worth a fortune. Wait, this logo. It's hers. Mom, it's Mila's. My sister's voice cracked into a half scream. Then she drove off, tires squealing down the street. Inside, I stood still for a long time, the coffee cooling in my hands. I'd always imagined the day they found out. I thought maybe I'd feel triumph, vindication, something burning and loud. But what came instead was quiet relief, like finally setting down a weight I'd carried too long. An hour later, the intercom buzzed. A familiar voice followed. Mila, it's Mom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, cruel and calm, made me press the button. She stood there in her tailored coat, makeup too heavy, hair sprayed into place, like she'd rehearsed this visit in a mirror. Time had carved new lines around her mouth, but her eyes were the same, calculating first, soft second. When I opened the door, her perfume hit me before her words did. Mila, she said quietly. You've done well. I didn't reply. She looked past me into the foyer, scanning the minimalist furniture, the warm lights, the wall of windows, everything she used to worship in other people's houses. I didn't realize how far you'd come, she continued. Lisa called and I had to see it for myself. I leaned on the doorframe. You've seen it now. Her lips trembled slightly. I was wrong, Mila, about so many things. I almost laughed. The same woman who once kicked me out now spoke like a guest. I remembered her voice at that dinner. Sharp, proud, cruel. You're a failure, Mila. Get out. I don't need an apology, I said softly. I just need peace. She hesitated. I want us to be a family again. I met her eyes. We were never one. Her composure cracked then. For the first time, she looked small, like a woman stripped of her audience. You've changed, she whispered. I smiled faintly. No, I just stopped asking for permission. We stood there in silence, the kind that makes people face themselves. I saw her glance around again, desperate to find something to hold on to, some reason to still feel superior. But all she saw was what she'd thrown away. Finally, she turned toward the door. If you ever want to talk, I'll let you know, I said, closing it gently behind her. The sound of the latch echoed through the house like punctuation. I walked back to my office where the sunlight spilled across the desk and glinted off a photo I kept beside my laptop. Dad and me, laughing over tangled wires and coffee cups. His handwriting still marked the back. Build something real. I smiled, whispering. I did. That night my phone buzzed again. Pamela, my old college friend. You won't believe this, she said between laughs. Your mom's name is all over that Greenwich Facebook group. People are saying she threw you out and gave your sister the house. Now they found out you built your own company here. She's mortified. I said nothing, just listened as Pamela read a few posts aloud. Leslie Moore's daughter owns that smart house on Elmwood. Karma's poetic, isn't it? Pamela chuckled. You should see the comments, everyone's on your side. I leaned back in my chair, the quiet hum of the house surrounding me. I don't need sides, I said. Just silence. But silence, it turned out, wasn't what they got. 2 weeks later, Lisa's husband filed for divorce. Word spread fast. Her investments, luxury condos she'd flipped for quick profit, had tanked. She'd sold her Manhattan apartment, moved back with Mom, and stopped showing up at the club. Pamela called again. "Your sister's not doing great. Mom, too. No one invites them anywhere anymore." I thought of that engagement dinner, the laughter, the applause that filled the air when they gave her my father's house. Every guest who cheered back then now whispered behind their backs. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I didn't call. I just kept working. Green tech was expanding into new states, our software integrating with smart grids across the Northeast. Misty ran operations now. Justin handled investors. My days were long but peaceful. Nights were quiet, filled with the soft rhythm of the solar system shifting to night mode. Sometimes when I stood on the rooftop, I could see the faint glow of the old neighborhood lights, my mother's street, the house that used to be ours. It felt distant now, almost fictional. I remembered that night again, her toast, her voice, the weight of the humiliation. For years, I thought revenge would be fire and fury. Turns out it was sunlight and stillness. The next morning, a letter arrived. No return address, the handwriting hers. I opened it slowly. Asterisk, Mila. Asterisk, it began. Asterisk. I see now what I destroyed. I wanted to shape you into someone the world respected. I didn't realize you already were. I'm sorry, Mom. The paper trembled in my hand. I folded it neatly, walked to the kitchen, and slid it into the flame of the gas stove. The edges curled black, then vanished. I watched the smoke drift upward and whispered, "Apology accepted, just not delivered." Outside, the house's automated blinds adjusted with the sun. Light flooded the room again, warm and forgiving. For the first time in years, I felt free not from them, but from needing them. Word travels fast in towns like Greenwich. Within a month, my mother's name, once whispered with admiration, became gossip. The same women who clinked glasses with her at galas now turned their heads at the country club. Someone leaked the story about the engagement dinner, how she'd thrown me out and gifted the family house to my sister. She called her daughter a failure. One post read, "Now look who's begging for forgiveness." Pamela sent me screenshots, laughing softly. "She's become a cautionary tale, Mila. Everyone says karma finally showed up wearing solar panels." I didn't laugh. I just stared out the window at the slow rise of the morning sun, my reflection merging with the house that ran entirely on my code. Lisa's life unraveled too. Her marriage collapsed after her husband discovered the debt she'd hidden. She sold her jewelry, then her car, then the condo Mom helped her buy. The sister who once smirked across the table now avoided public places altogether. One evening, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single line written in my mother's handwriting. Asterisk, I lost everything trying to keep appearances. You built everything by being real. No signature, no address, just the truth. I folded the note, set it on my desk, and turned off the lights. The house adjusted itself for night mode, humming softly around me. Silence, justice, peace. I stood on the rooftop as the last light faded, the panels tilting toward the sunset. The city hummed below, but up here it was quiet. I'd rebuilt everything they tore down, and I did it without revenge, just resolve. Sometimes silence speaks louder than shouting. If you've ever had to walk away to find peace, you'll understand. At my sister's engagement celebration, held in the grand ballroom of the country club, the crystal chandelier overhead sparkled as my mother, Leslie, raised her champagne flute. A wide, practiced smile stretched across her face. "A toast," she announced, her voice carrying across the room. "To Lisa, my daughter, who has actually made something of her life, a true success story." The assembled guests, a collection of Greenwich's elite, erupted in polite applause. My sister, ever poised, offered a dazzling, picture-perfect smile. Then, the smile faded slightly as my mother's gaze shifted, turning towards me, the other daughter, the one who, in her eyes, had not made something of her life. Her voice dropped, losing its celebratory tone, becoming sharp and cutting. "And you, Mila," she spat, her words dripping with disdain, "you're nothing but a failure. Get out. Leave. Now." The joyous atmosphere in the room instantly evaporated. A heavy, suffocating silence descended. Silverware clattered against china as forks froze midair, halfway to their intended destinations. Every eye in the room, it seemed, was fixed upon me. Without a word, I turned and walked away, the weight of her judgment crushing me. As I reached the doorway, I saw her, my mother, handing Lisa, her golden child, the keys to the family home, a property worth easily $500,000. That night, I lost everything that had ever mattered to me. My home, my family, my sense of belonging. But, as the saying goes, revenge is a dish best served cold. 3 years later, they drove past my new, imposing gate, their eyes widening in disbelief as they finally realized whose house it really was. The tables had turned. Growing up in the affluent, exclusive enclave of Greenwich, Connecticut, our family presented a facade of utter perfection to the outside world. The carefully manicured lawn, the pristine white picket fence, the extravagant charity galas, all contributed to the image of a flawless, enviable existence. My mother, Leslie, fiercely guarded this image, referring to it as, quote, our reputation, as if it were a fragile, priceless artifact. Behind closed doors, however, the reality was far less idyllic. Inside our home, everything revolved around appearances, maintaining the carefully constructed illusion of perfection. My mother was the quintessential socialite, the kind of woman who was far more concerned with the latest gossip circulating at the country club than with the genuine emotions or heartfelt tears of her own daughters. My sister Lisa, 3 years my senior and meticulously polished from head to toe, was undoubtedly her masterpiece, the embodiment of everything my mother valued. Lisa, she would declare, making sure I was within earshot, is destined to run the world someday. She has the drive, the ambition, the presence. My father, Zachary, on the other hand, was a stark contrast to my mother's flamboyant personality. He was a quiet, gentle, and endlessly patient man, a brilliant software engineer who, in order to keep my mother happy, had reluctantly traded his passion for technology for a more financially rewarding career in the world of finance. He was the one who nurtured my love for coding, spending countless late nights with me in his cluttered, cozy home office. As I diligently typed away, he'd often adjust his glasses, a warm smile gracing his lips, and offer words of encouragement. Build something real, Mila, he'd say, his voice filled with genuine belief in my potential. Those simple words resonated deeply within me, sticking with me long after he was tragically taken from us. His sudden and unexpected death in a car accident during my senior year of high school cast a long, dark shadow over our home, plunging it into a state of perpetual coldness. My mother's obsession with maintaining the family's image intensified, becoming even more pronounced, as if she felt compelled to prove to the world that the loss of her husband hadn't diminished her control or shattered her carefully constructed reality. She found it infinitely easier to shower Lisa with affection and praise, as my sister was a perfect reflection of herself, a living testament to her success as a mother. I, on the other hand, became a constant reminder of what she couldn't control, what she perceived as her own failures. My academic achievements in the fields of renewable energy and software engineering barely registered on her radar, earning only a dismissive nod and a condescending, cute hobby, Mila. While Lisa received framed awards for her business essays that Dad had more often than not helped her write. Aunt Lori, my mother's older sister, who lived in the neighboring town, was equally unsympathetic and just as image-obsessed. She had married into a substantial fortune, and every time she paid us a visit, she seemed to find a new and inventive way to subtly remind me of my supposedly insignificant place in the family hierarchy. Still playing with those gadgets, Mila? She would ask, a smirk playing on her lips as she delicately sipped her expensive wine. Perhaps one day you'll finally grow out of it and find something worthwhile to do with your life. Over time, I learned to plaster on a smile, to keep my voice down, and to disappear from their presence before their cruel laughter could inflict too much damage. For years, I clung to the naive belief that silence was the key to maintaining peace within the family. But that fateful night, at Lisa's extravagant engagement dinner, I realized that silence only served to protect the very people who were causing the most harm. I stood beside the elegantly decorated table, nervously holding my champagne glass, the crystal chandelier above us casting an intricate pattern of shimmering light against the luxurious gold wallpaper. My mother, with a theatrical flourish, raised her glass, her eyes sparkling with pride as she toasted Lisa, acting as if she had just crowned a queen, anointing her as the sole heir to the family kingdom. Then, She abruptly turned her attention to me, the smile vanishing from her face, and delivered the final devastating words of a sentence that would irrevocably alter the course of my life. "To the one who didn't," she finished, the unspoken make something of herself, hanging heavily in the air. As the uncomfortable silence replaced the earlier festive atmosphere, I silently turned and walked out of the room, the weight of her disappointment an almost physical burden. My mother then proceeded to hand Lisa the keys to the family home, the very same house where Dad had patiently taught me how to build my first solar tracking app, igniting a passion that would eventually shape my entire future. Watching Lisa nonchalantly slip those keys into her designer purse felt like witnessing them bury my father's unwavering belief in me all over again. It was that night, surrounded by the opulence and superficiality of my family's world, that I finally decided to stop being their quiet disappointment, their hidden shame. I had no clear destination in mind, but I knew with absolute certainty that I had to escape, to find somewhere, anywhere, that was far, far away from them, and from the distorted, negative image they had projected onto me. The first night after that unforgettable dinner, I found myself sleeping in my beat-up car, parked on a deserted street. The rain lashed against the windshield with relentless intensity, blurring the city lights into hazy, indistinct streaks of white. I vividly remember gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white with tension, whispering fiercely to myself, "Don't cry, Mila. Absolutely do not cry." Giving in to tears felt like fulfilling my mother's low expectations, like confirming her belief that I was weak and incapable. By morning, fueled by a mixture of anger and determination, I drove to the vibrant, chaotic borough of Brooklyn and signed a lease for the most affordable, bare-bones studio apartment I could find. It was a tiny, cramped space, consisting of a single room, a solitary window that offered a dismal view of a brick wall, and a perpetually hissing radiator that sounded as if it were a living, breathing entity. I unpacked the meager contents of my life. A worn duffel bag filled with a few changes of clothes, my trusty, cracked laptop that had seen better days, and a battered folder containing my old coding projects, the seeds of my future success. That was it. No family photos to remind me of what I had lost. No comfortable furniture to ease the pain of my sudden displacement. No trace whatsoever of the life I had just been so brutally cut off from. For weeks that stretched into months, I subsisted on a diet of cheap instant noodles and sporadic freelance work, accepting small, unfulfilling website gigs that barely managed to cover my mounting bills. Every night, consumed by a strange mixture of morbid curiosity and self-inflicted pain, I would scroll through the endless stream of photos from Lisa's engagement party that flooded social media. She looked radiant, glowing with happiness, and bathed in the adoration of everyone around her. My mother, ever the proud socialite, stood regally beside her, a glass of champagne in hand, the carefully crafted caption reading, "Proud Mom Moment. My daughter, Lisa, is my everything." I refrained from commenting, refusing to give them the satisfaction of knowing that their actions had affected me. I didn't post anything, not wanting to reveal my current circumstances. I simply worked, throwing myself into my coding projects with a fierce determination, using my skills as a shield against the crushing weight of loneliness and rejection. One seemingly ordinary afternoon, while I was hunched over my laptop, attempting to write code in a crowded, noisy coffee shop, I unintentionally overheard two impeccably dressed investors discussing a city-sponsored grant program specifically designed to support sustainable technology startups. Something within me instantly clicked, as if a long-dormant idea had suddenly sprung to life. I quickly opened my laptop and began sketching out a detailed outline of the innovative concept that had been gestating in my mind ever since Dad's late-night coding lessons years ago. A sophisticated software program capable of significantly reducing urban energy waste through the implementation of dynamic, adaptive solar energy systems. It was at that precise moment that Professor Melinda Jenkins, my former university mentor, re-entered my life, appearing as if by some stroke of fate. Back in college, when I was just a naive, enthusiastic student, she had been one of the few people who genuinely believed in my potential and saw the immense value in my passion for renewable technology, a field that most others dismissed as a niche interest. Hesitantly, I emailed her the prototype of my software program, half expecting to be met with polite silence or a generic expression of encouragement. Instead, to my utter amazement, she replied within a matter of hours, her message brimming with enthusiasm. "Mila," she wrote, "this is absolutely incredible. Come see me as soon as possible. I think this is incredibly promising, and I see immense potential in this project. Her small, unassuming lab at NYU quickly became my sanctuary, my second home, a place where I felt valued, supported, and inspired. It was there that she introduced me to Misty Ramirez, a brilliant, fiercely independent engineer with lightning-fast hands and an even quicker mind. Misty possessed a unique ability to understand me on a level that few people ever had, recognizing my unwavering drive, my stubborn refusal to give up, and the quiet, simmering anger that fueled my ambition. An anger born from a lifetime of being underestimated and overlooked. Together, we spent countless sleepless nights debugging code, running complex simulations, and even occasionally collapsing for a few hours of fitful sleep under our cluttered desks in between crucial tests. "You know," Misty observed one evening as we were furiously typing away at our keyboards, "you code like you're fighting someone, Mila. Like you have a personal vendetta against the very laws of physics." "Maybe I am," I retorted, a wry smile playing on my lips. "Maybe I am." And so, the framework for Green Tech Solutions, the company that would eventually redefine my life, began to take shape. We meticulously designed and built sophisticated software models that accurately tracked the angles of sunlight across complex urban grids, automatically adjusting energy flow to maximize efficiency and minimize waste. When the very first version of our program finally worked, flawlessly executing its intended function, we both erupted in a spontaneous, unrestrained scream of joy, so loud that security guards rushed up to the lab to investigate the commotion. Despite this early success, survival remained a constant, uphill battle. One particularly bleak morning, the dreaded rent notice slid under my apartment door, the stark red letters screaming a dire warning that sent my stomach into a knot of anxiety. I remember desperately calling Misty, forcing a laugh to mask the sheer panic that was threatening to overwhelm me. "Okay, so here's the deal," I stammered, my voice trembling slightly. "I just need to secure one single investor before the landlord decides to change the locks on my door and throw all my worldly possessions out onto the street." As luck, or perhaps destiny would have it, that much-needed investor materialized in the form of Justin Patel, a sharp, forward-thinking venture capitalist whom Melinda had graciously introduced us to. He was a young, unconventional figure in the world of high finance, often sporting trendy sneakers with his impeccably tailored suit, and speaking at a rapid-fire pace, as if his brilliant mind was operating several steps ahead of his words. After witnessing a demonstration of our groundbreaking software program, his eyes lit up with genuine excitement. "You know what?" he declared, his voice filled with conviction. "You're not just building another tech company. You're actually solving something that truly matters. Something that has the potential to make a real difference in the world. Let's make this real. Let's bring this vision to life." His venture capital fund provided us with a much-needed infusion of $75,000. It was barely enough to keep our heads above water, to breathe a collective sigh of relief, but it was enough to get us started, to provide us with the initial momentum we needed to launch Green Tech Solutions into the world. With renewed hope and a sense of purpose, Misty and I packed up our meager belongings and moved into a small, unglamorous co-working space, a cramped office permeated with the lingering aroma of burnt coffee and old carpet. We worked tirelessly, dedicating ourselves to our company with a relentless intensity, often pulling 18-hour days, fueled by copious amounts of caffeine and an unwavering determination to succeed. Sometimes, I would catch a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened office window, seeing my own exhausted face, the hollow, sleep-deprived eyes, the hair pulled back in a messy bun, and I would whisper to myself, a silent affirmation in the face of adversity: "I am not a failure. I will not let them define me." Slowly, painstakingly, things began to shift in our favor. A large, local grocery chain, impressed by our innovative technology and our passionate dedication, agreed to test our software program across 10 of their stores. The initial results far exceeded even our most optimistic projections, demonstrating a remarkable reduction in energy bills, averaging around 30%. On the momentous day that they officially signed the contract, solidifying our partnership, I went back to my humble apartment, sat down on the bare floor, and allowed the tears to finally flow freely, unburdened by the need to suppress my emotions. But these were not tears of sadness or despair. They were tears of pure, unadulterated joy, tears of relief, tears of validation. For the first time in a long time, I had tangible proof, undeniable evidence, that I was capable of achieving something meaningful, that I was not the failure my mother had always insisted I was. I resisted the urge to call my mother, to shove my success in her face, to demand the recognition I had always craved. I didn't need her validation anymore. Not yet, at least. But deep down, a small voice whispered insistently that she would inevitably find out about my achievements, that the news would eventually reach her, no matter how hard I tried to keep it hidden. And when that day finally arrived, I wanted her to witness my success firsthand, not through sensationalized headlines or whispered gossip, but with her own eyes, to see the tangible impact of my work and the undeniable evidence of my transformation. The months that followed were a whirlwind of relentless activity, a blur of complex code, intricate contracts, and copious amounts of caffeine. Misty and I worked tirelessly, pushing ourselves to the absolute limit, often working until dawn most nights, practically living on takeout food and sheer stubbornness. Green Tech Solutions was still a small, relatively unknown company, comprised of just 2 women huddled in a room full of tangled wires and computer equipment. But it was undeniably alive, pulsating with potential and driven by a shared sense of purpose. Every positive client review, every new email inquiry, felt like a breath of fresh air, a surge of much-needed oxygen fueling our collective determination. Despite these triumphs, the old, negative voices in my head continued to haunt me, their insidious whispers echoing through my mind, threatening to undermine my confidence. My mother's dismissive, "Cute hobby, Mila," my aunt's patronizing, "You'll grow out of it," and Lisa's particularly cutting, "You're just jealous," were constant reminders of the low expectations that had been placed upon me. But instead of allowing these echoes to defeat me, I consciously chose to transform them into fuel, using their negativity as a source of motivation. Every time exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me, every time I felt like giving up, I would hear those voices again, and they would spur me onward, compelling me to keep typing, to keep pushing forward, to keep striving for something greater. We encountered numerous roadblocks along the way, of course. Our first major contract nearly collapsed when a large retailer delayed their payments, jeopardizing our already precarious financial situation. The rent on our co-working space nearly doubled overnight, adding another layer of stress and uncertainty. Misty, normally unflappable, began to panic, her anxiety palpable. I, however, remained surprisingly calm, grounded by the knowledge that I had already lost everything once before. Money no longer held the same power over me. It no longer had the ability to instill fear in my heart. What truly terrified me was the prospect of reverting back to my former self, of becoming once again the silent, apologetic, invisible girl who had been defined by the expectations of others. One particularly late night, I found myself alone in the office, working diligently to finish a series of crucial code updates for an upcoming system audit. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, the constant low thrum of traffic and the distant wail of sirens creating a symphony of urban noise, the rhythm of a world that was completely indifferent to my struggles, a world that wouldn't notice whether I succeeded or failed. I distinctly remember gazing at my reflection in the darkened computer screen,